Yesterday, with the Detroit Lions' preseason victory over the Kansas City Chiefs, the roster is now starting to come into ever more clear focus. But the real question is who actually secured their spots yesterday and who might have secured their ticket off the roster? We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions fans, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. So first and foremost, my friends, I just wanted to put this out there. I do apologize that yesterday I wasn't able to push out any content. I wasn't feeling very good at all. I'm still not exactly feeling the greatest, but I feel that I have to get back on the horse regardless of how I personally feel. So we're going to try and do our best here. But I did watch the game yesterday, and what I can personally say is that there were quite a couple of people that I was paying attention to, and overall, I thought that there were people yesterday who I think not only secured, they had punched their ticket, so to speak, to get on the roster, and maybe in some cases secure themselves as a long-term job holder on the team. And for others, there were some that I think that, I'm going to be honest, I think their time is done. I think that realistically, as much as maybe I might have had a preconception that they might have made it, or others might have had a preconception that they would have made it, I think their time is done. You have to take an understanding of how this roster is right now, and the point of the matter is that the Lions roster, you're no longer going to make this roster by just being good enough. That's not going to work. That's not going to cut it anymore. You have to stand out. And by standing out, you have to stand out in a good way. You have to make plays. You have to do your job consistently and effectively. And there are people that I watched yesterday that I just don't think they are going to make it because they're not doing anything to either stand out, or they have become so much of an afterthought that there's no way that with one preseason game left and one more week after that before the regular season starts, that they're going to make an impression. So I call this episode here my heroes and my zeros. Like, who are the heroes yesterday, not only in terms of the team, but also in terms of their job security, and who are the zeros in terms of not doing anything to really help the team, and who actually hurt their job security, who pretty much punched their ticket right off this roster. So with that, let's take a look at who I call my heroes and my zeros. And there are a couple of honorable mentions because I couldn't include everybody, but I'm talking about the guys that really, really stood out on either side of the spectrum. So let's talk about the hero first, and then we'll go back to a zero and then back and forth. I'm not going to do all heroes and then all zeros. I'm going to go back and forth so that way we can kind of go one side and the other. The first hero we're going to talk about, by far, without doubt in my mind, has got to be Jake Bates. Dude, I was one of those guys that when Jake Bates was making all those kicks in the UFL, other than Derek and a couple of others, I was really freaking excited. I wanted the Lions to sign Jake Bates because I was like, dude, I look at this guy and I could see this guy being our next long-term kicker because I don't know about anybody else, but I had gotten so freaking fed up of the damn revolving door of kickers that we had for the past 3-4 years, ever since we lost, freaking Matt Prater to the Cardinals. It's like, listen, I want a long-term solution at kicker. I'm tired of the Badgeleys. I'm tired of the Pattersons. I'm tired of, the freaking Bullocks. I'm tired of all of that. I want somebody that I can rely on, somebody that I know if they step in, I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's like, dude, we had Jason Hanson. We had Eddie Murray. We had Matt Prater. When are we going to get our next one of those? And it looks like Jake Bates is that guy. Dude, everybody wanted to talk about how hyped up they were about him when he first came in, but then when he started struggling a little bit, some people were starting to doubt him. It's like, dude, you got to give the guy some time. He's got to learn how to become an NFL kicker after being a UFL kicker. And it's like, dude, ever since that one, 50-plus yard field goal against the Giants, he has just been damn near automatic. Because, for crying out loud, He hit 4 field goals yesterday. That's 12 points. The Lions only scored 24 points. That means Jake Bates by himself scored half of the points to win the game. Now, I'm not trying to take us back to the times of the past, but who remembers when Jason Hanson was our best weapon on our damn roster and he helped us win a lot more games than we could have if we not have had him? So think about it right there. Jake Bates goes out, he kicks 4 field goals, he kicks half of our points through, and he also kicks the game winner. Like, dude, you want to talk about automatic. You want to talk about a guy that comes through in the clutch who has the leg, has the accuracy, has the consistency. That's Jake Bates. I take a look at Jake Bates, and I'm like, dude, I'm seeing a combination of Jason Hanson and Matt Prater all in one. Matt Prater's leg is clearly obvious with Jake Bates' leg, but Jason Hanson, that guy was about as consistent, about as automatic as it came when it was like, hey, you know what? You need a kick? Go send out Hanson. He's going to make it happen. So, first hero on my list, got to be Jake Bates. Jake Bates absolutely, I think, not only punched himself right onto this roster, but I think we don't have to worry about a kicking problem anymore. I sincerely don't think so. And it's like, dude, Jake Bates is what? Like in his mid-20s? Dude, we could have him for the next 15 plus years. So it's like, dude, I'm not at all worried about kicker anymore. Take a look at what Jake Bates has done, preseason or not. It's like, hey, this guy's doing his job. He's consistent, he's reliable, he's turned the corner. I love what we have with him. So Jake Bates, definite hero, number 1. Now we're going to go to zero, number 1. And I know this for a fact. There are going to be some people that are going to absolutely not like hearing this, but it's the damn truth, and I'm kind of a little bit disappointed about it. It's James Houston. I don't know what the hell's happened to James Houston, but James Houston has in essence all but become an afterthought on this roster. For a guy that literally sprung onto the scene for the last 8 games of the 2022 season, he has become a virtual afterthought. And I don't think there's any chance he's going to make this roster. And if he does, it's only going to be as a practice squad player. Because let's call it for what it is. For a guy that came into the NFL as James the Problem Houston, at first he used to be a problem for other teams. Now he's become a problem for the Lions roster. Because it's like, dude, there's clearly talent that Houston has. This is a guy that definitely knows how to pass rush. But that's the problem. He has become so much of a one-trick pony, he cannot expand further into the role. Think about it. The Lions were trying to get him to be more of a Sam linebacker, but they abandoned that idea because he simply couldn't pick up on the understanding of the position. And then it's like, dude, in the very first game, I remember watching against the Giants. He was missing tackles. He didn't look comfortable. He looked like he was out of place. And then, dude, yesterday, I don't even recall ever seeing him on the damn field. So it's like, okay, he's a one-trick pony. He's not expanding outside of the role other than being a specialty pass rusher. And on top of that, now he's developing an injury problem because, hey, what happened last year? Oh, that's right. He was out for the majority of the year and most of the playoffs with an ankle injury. Now I think he's battling a knee injury. So it's like, at this point, I'm sorry to say it, James the Problem Houston has now become a problem for the roster management, and I'm sorry, I think he's got to go. He's not doing anything. And just let's think about this, how bad that is for Houston. It's not like he's got against a whole bunch of other guys that are like superior in comparison to him. Is Matthew Betts better than him? Absolutely. Is Davenport better than him? Absolutely. But it's not like a night and day difference. But Houston has fallen so far off the wayward path. He's fallen so far from grace and so much of an afterthought. He's done. I'm sorry. I don't see any way that he's going to make the roster unless it's a practice squad player. And unfortunately, that's not going to cut it for him. And remember, if you go back a while ago, James Houston almost wanted to give up on Detroit. He almost wanted to say, listen, I want out. I don't want to wait anymore. It wasn't until he actually got a chance at the end of the 2022 season that whole thought kind of disappeared. But now it's like, dude, he's just not getting any better. He's just stuck in neutral. So that's zero number 1. Now let's go to hero number 2. Hero number 2 for me has got to be Sione Vaki. Sione Vaki, I will say this right now. I was kind of, when we drafted him, I was a little bit perplexed at why the Lions wanted to use him more as a running back rather than to kind of use him as a dual threat kind of player. But dude, the more I've seen this guy play, the more it's like, okay, I can definitely understand now why Brad Holmes wanted this guy to be more of a running back. Because this dude has, I almost look at him and I see almost like a satellite back. Because this is a guy that can run, but what he's really, really good at doing is catching the ball and picking up yards after the catch. Think about it, folks. In yesterday's game against the Giants, he had 82 all-purpose yards as a running back. And the majority of those yards came from being a receiving option. I think he had 60 yards receiving, and most of that was picking up yards after the catch. I think at this point, that's a great thing to have because, okay, obviously we know we have Jahmyr Gibbs. Obviously we know we have David Montgomery. But for me, to have a guy like Vaki who could come in and could play kind of both of those roles to kind of take a little bit of heat off of both running backs, kind of give them a breather so that way they're not getting worn out and being more susceptible to injury, that's an awesome thing to have. And the way I kind of look at Vaki is I look at guys of the past like, Theo Riddick. Theo Riddick wasn't necessarily known as a quote-unquote running back, but you plug him in as a receiver, he was a great satellite back. Another guy that kind of falls into that category is Alvin Kamara. So for me, I look at Vaki, and I'm really, really impressed with this young man. I think he's going to have himself a very good spot, a very good role on this roster. So that's hero number 2. Let's go to zero number 2. And again, I hate talking about players like this because this is a guy that I absolutely love his work ethic. I love what he's done for us the last couple of years, but I'm sorry, but I think he's outlived his usefulness here. I really have. And as much as I hate to say it, it's kind of the truth. And that's Craig Reynolds. That's Netflix. Netflix was kind of holding on by a bare thread last year. But at this point, it's like, listen, you've got Sione Vaki, as I just talked about. He's been stepping up immensely in practice. But go back to yesterday's game. Craig Reynolds really didn't do much of anything in comparison to Vaki. If I recall correctly, Reynolds had 1 rush for 5 yards. It seems quite honest that the Lions are leaving Reynolds behind because Reynolds is not really doing much of anything. He's not really able to separate himself or to distinguish himself opposite of Vaki or anybody else. And it's like, listen, again, this goes back to what I said at the very beginning. You have to do stuff to distinguish yourself, to set yourself apart from other people. And it's like, listen, I like Craig Reynolds. I like his story. I like everything about him. But it's like, listen, the Lions are a team now where it's like you have to be able to be more than just a certain type of player. You have to be able to wear multiple hats. We know Sione Vaki can do that. He can play special teams. He can play offense. He can play defense. Craig Reynolds, he can play special teams, but he's more of a running back exclusive. And as a running back, he's not really going to see a whole lot of action opposite of Montgomery and freaking, Gibbs because Reynolds is not really known as a pass catch threat. He's just more known as a runner. Which is like, okay, that's fine and all, but you have to be able to have multiple roles, multiple hats to wear. And unfortunately, Craig Reynolds doesn't have that. And that's why I think he's not getting as much attention. That's why I think he's not getting as many looks now anymore. Because there's really not much for him to do. He's being, overshadowed by other people that can take over his role. And that's a problem. So that's zero number 2. Let's go to hero number 3, which I'm going to say this right now. While this guy is a hero, and while this guy has done very, very well for himself over the last, 2 days, or not 2 days, pardon me, 2 weeks, I'm still going to advocate that the Lions make a move at this position. And the hero I'm talking about is Isaiah Williams, the guy that's fighting for the wide receiver number 3 job. Let's talk about it for what it is. Isaiah Williams, for the second straight week, was the leading receiver for the Detroit Lions. Because you go back to the Giants game, he was the leading receiver in that game. And in this game against the Chiefs, he was the leading receiver. Over the last 2 weeks, he's had 10 receptions for 126 yards. That's pretty damn good. That means he's getting almost 13 yards on average a catch. That's pretty damn good. But it gets even better than that. If you take a look at all the targets that he's had and all the receptions that he's had over the last 2 weeks, he has a reception percentage of 83%. For an undrafted free agent rookie this year, dude, that's phenomenal. That's awesome. This is a guy that has absolutely stepped up and has absolutely started to distinguish himself amongst other guys that are not really doing anything to kind of step up in that area. But again, as much as Isaiah Williams is doing a great job, I still believe the Lions need to go out and make another move at receiver because it's like, listen, I like what Williams is doing in preseason, but it's like, dude, it's preseason. You're running against vanilla concepts. You're running vanilla concepts. Once the regular season comes, the kid gloves come off. Now it's real football. Now you're going up against the best of the best, and you're getting their best shots. And I don't know if Williams is going to be able to do that or not. So that's why I still advocate to go out and get Hunter Renfrow. And some people might agree with me. Some people might not. That's totally fine. But I want experience, and I want the best possible player the Lions can get. And while Isaiah Williams is cutting it up in preseason and training camp, that lingering question that's in the back of my mind is that going to translate to regular season still is playing an effect here? So that's hero number 3. Now let's go. You know what? I'm going to kind of combine the two into one here because it's in the same vein here, folks. If you guys have all kind of noticed, other than the very first 0, I've kind of kept it with the same position opposite of the hero, and that's the same thing here. I'm going to put 0, 3, and 4 on the same screen, and that's Donovan Peoples-Jones, and that's Darius Fountain. And I'm going to say this right now. Donovan Peoples-Jones definitely is more of a 0 than Darius Fountain, but it's like, listen, all 3 of these guys that I just talked about, Williams, Peoples-Jones, Fountain, they're all fighting for that job for the number 3 wide receiver. And again, I thought that Donovan Peoples-Jones was going to be the top guy to get that job this offseason, but he has just not done anything, or he's not done nearly enough. Again, we heard that Dan Campbell said that Donovan Peoples-Jones had stringed together a couple of really good practices. But you go to yesterday's game against the Chiefs, he had 1 catch, and I think, again, it was like for 5 yards. He's just not getting out on the field and doing what he needs to do to stand out. It's like, dude, Donovan Peoples-Jones has extremely much more experience than Isaiah Williams, who's an undrafted free agent. But yet, who's the one that's putting out the production? It's not Peoples-Jones. It's freaking Williams. And the same thing goes for Fountain. Fountain obviously is not an undrafted free agent, at least this year. He might have been in the past, but the whole point is that in training camp, there were quite a couple of days where Fountain was the guy that was just making all these plays. But it's like, where are the plays in training camp that we keep hearing everything about when it comes time to actually play on the field? They're not showing up. They're not translating. And it's like, listen, you can be a practice warrior all you want, but where the hell are you when it's time to actually go into game mode? And that's the problem I'm having with Fountain. It's like, listen, you have to not only be able to produce in practice, but you have to show up and show out on the field, and he's not doing that. So again, those two I'm kind of combining together as the same position group, but that's 0-3 and 0-4. Which brings us to our last hero, Hendon Hooker. Now, I'm going to say this right now. Hendon Hooker absolutely had a great game yesterday. That was probably one of the best performances I've seen out of a quarterback in a preseason matchup in a long time. Now, I will say this. Hendon Hooker started off a little bit shaky, but boy, did he settle in, and he got way, way better by the end of the game. Because it's like, dude, he finished the game 12-15. That's 80% completion rate, folks. That's pretty damn good. Finished with 150 passing yards, had 108.3 pass rating. He did an excellent job managing the offense and coming in and playing. Now, I will say this. He also had a rushing touchdown. And I noticed how when it was time for him to rush, he actually paid attention to what not only his mother said, but also what I said and what also a lot of other people said, including Dan Campbell. Slide. Do not try and take on linebackers and safeties by lowering your shoulders. Slide and live to fight another down, please. So Hendon Hooker absolutely did a great job. The one, I'd say, blemish that he had yesterday was when he had a fumble that was lost and recovered by somebody else. That was not good. So it's like, listen, so glad that you listened about the whole thing with, sliding, listened about the whole thing with, doing your job as far as scrambling. But now you got to do a better job of, with ball security as far as not fumbling it. That's something you got to do because, again, best example I can think of in that department, take a look at Justin Fields. Justin Fields is one of the most prolific, scrambling, mobile quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's also got the most fumbles out of any quarterback in the NFL. I need you to make sure you're covering up that ball and not letting it get possibly knocked out and turned over. But overall, not going to harp too much on that. Hendon Hooker, vast improvement over his first game. Really, really great job on Hendon Hooker's part. So, and then I'm going to put in some honorable mentions here. I thought Matthew Betts had a really great job, had a great sack, did very well on special teams, and when he played, same thing for Uku. I thought he did very good as well, got another sack, and then I also thought Brandon Joseph did a really good job at safety. So, all of those guys are also honorable mentions. Now, I know that there are people who will be like, David, where in the hell is Nate Sudfeld on your list of zeros? I know people want me to put him on there. I'm not going to put Nate Sudfeld on there for one simple reason. Nate Sudfeld had to go up against the Chiefs' starting defense with our backups. And for that first, drive, he looked pretty damn good. Now, obviously, over the remainder of the game, he definitely fell off a cliff in comparison. I mean, he barely finished with more than 50% pass completion rate. But it's like, listen, understand something here, folks. If we're going to give Hooker all the praise that he gave at the end of the game when he was with the third-string offense up against, the third-string defense of the Chiefs, okay, I'm giving Hendon Hooker that praise and I'm giving that equal weight. But you also have to do the same thing for Nate Sudfeld. With our backup offense, he looked pretty damn good against the Chiefs' starting defense. Now, I understand. People are going to say, you know what, still don't like Nate Sudfeld. And you know what? I don't think Nate Sudfeld's going to cut it either. But the best way I can look at Nate Sudfeld from yesterday's game is he wasn't necessarily a zero, but he definitely wasn't a hero. The best way I can put him is he was treading water. He just was pretty much doing exactly what he was supposed to do. He didn't do anything super egregious. I know that one interception, everybody's going to hold on to that, but it's like, listen, he also had the only passing touchdown out of the quarterbacks yesterday between him and Hendon Hooker. So it's like, listen, I kind of call that a wash. I'm trying to be objective here, folks. And again, I'm not saying I want Nate Sudfeld as our backup quarterback. I definitely don't. But it's like, listen, you have to be objective when you're taking a look at this stuff. Did Nate Sudfeld have a great game yesterday? No, he didn't. But he also didn't have a horrible game either. It was just an okay performance. It was decent. That's the best way I can look at it. And because of that, that neither makes him a hero nor a zero. That just means, hey, you're treading water, bro. That's all you're doing. And again, chances are, as much as Hendon Hooker's doing a great job with the third stringers, that's not going to be enough to supplant Nate Sudfeld. I hate saying it, but it's probably the truth. And I know people aren't going to want to hear it, but again, I've never shied away from telling the truth. But anyway, folks, those are my heroes, those are my zeros, those are the guys that I think are going to make the roster, and those are the guys that I think are checking themselves out of the roster. But we'll see what happens. There's obviously another preseason game. There's more practices to come, but we'll see what happens. Having settled that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM, Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage you all to watch the next episode. Also encourage you all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and now had a chance to do so, again, want to highly encourage y'all to subscribe. But I also want to encourage y'all, please, make sure to hit that bell notification icon so that way you guys never miss any more content I push out. Also want to encourage y'all, please, make sure to share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. The more we can share it, the greater the channel grows, the greater the channel has a reach, and the greater the spread it has. And with that being said, to everybody, I hope y'all are doing well. Hope y'all got something in life that makes you happy, makes you smile. Hope y'all enjoyed the content. God bless. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.